Hello and welcome to Unexplained Arkansas. This is Amber,
And this is Lisa.
and we are having another spooktacular October episode. We are getting closer and closer to Halloween. We're recording on a Sunday, and Halloween is this upcoming Thursday, so I'm really excited.
Me too. I'm excited to see Max in his dinosaur costume.
Yes, if he'll wear the hood, I'm not sure if he's going to wear the hat. It may just be him with a dinosaur body, so I
That's
don't think he'll wear the hat.
okay. He probably won't, but that's okay. Maybe if he just wears
Yeah.
it for you to take pictures, that'll be worth it. So,
Well, it looks like the weather's gonna be kinda cold and rainy, so
ooh, okay.
he may want to be all
Hmm.
covered up when we go out there and trick or treat.
Yeah. And we need the rain. So maybe
We
it'll
do.
give, maybe it'll, oh.
Did you hear that? That was my cat. That was Parker. He jumped up and I have some wind chimes in my closet
I was about
that
to say, what is that?
no, I'm storing wind chimes in my closet, and he
Oh.
jumped up and just slapped the far out of them and made him do that, so I'm sorry.
That was funny. Yeah, I thought he was like playing an instrument.
Nope, nope. These were
Oh,
shell wind chimes I bought in El Salvador that
oh,
I just
okay.
kinda keep in my closet
Oh, okay,
for
good.
some strange reason.
Oh my goodness. Well, that woke me up.
Yeah.
So, so yay. Thanks,
He
Parker.
ran off when he did it. It's like he did a layup and then ran
Hmm.
off, so,
He's probably been eyeing them for a while. So
yeah,
too bad you didn't
they're
have that
tangled.
recorded. I love those cat videos.
He could star in his own cat videos.
Yeah. He could. So this is episode 59, and this
Yes.
is the Allen House of Monticello.
Yes.
So we did have a big weekend. We just did the Arkansas Paranormal Expo, and that's at the MacArthur, what is it, Military Museum there in Little
Yes.
Rock. It was amazing, and just a couple of shout outs. Thank you to Rhonda. She is with the Paranormal Expo. They put it on every year and it raises money for the museum. And she was awesome and gracious, and they had a lot of awesome people. And I still have some pictures to post. I listened to Carol Pate yesterday, and that was pretty awesome. And just I told a shout out. We had several fans stop by the table and we got pictures and they posted. So shout out to like Sean for stopping by. Two Seans. We had two Seans stop by.
Yes.
Um and so we had G, we're gonna call her G. So she came by and evidently she was so nervous the first time she came by that her mom had to like just kind of bring her around, and then she worked it out and she came and we got our picture with her. She was adorable. And I think she was 14. She was so cute. And so shout out to G, hope you're listening. And then also Evelyn. And then we also had, I'm trying to look at we had Debbie, and then sorry, I'm looking. We had Debbie and let's see, G's mom Andrea. I said Evelyn and Renee. So we had
Yes,
several come
Renee.
by. It was thrilling, and then we got to meet a new friend. You did a live on our account with our new friend Matt from
I
what,
did, yes.
Drunken Cryptids?
Drunken Cryptids, and Scott, I gave Scott the T-shirt from him, and he has already been wearing it, and he's loving that T-shirt, so,
So he's going to be a new listener of Matt. So Matt does have a
yes.
podcast, and Scott is already listening to it.
Mhm.
So yay.
Yes.
So those were our shout outs.
There was
So
a lot of Bigfoot represented and, Sasquatch type things yesterday. I noticed that.
yes,
If there
yes,
was one recurring theme, that was the theme.
yes. And we had those Ghostbusters right at the table beside
Yes.
us. Before I left, I did let them do, how they do the cards and see if I am a psychic. And I'm not
Oh,
psychic.
yeah.
I did not guess correctly at all.
Yeah.
So just FYI, if anyone's wondering if I'm psychic, I'm not. So true story. But I did listen to a psychic, and Carol was amazing.
Did she
So
talk about any crimes, true crime stuff she'd been involved with?
I'm trying to think. So I know that there were several things. It was pretty much when I got in there, Q&A, and so people were asking her questions, and she did not go into great detail, but she did tell how basically like it's kind of like she when she reads people, she has like I guess she gets the feelings from like her three, kind of people that tell her. I don't know. It's interesting. I can't relay the whole thing, but anyway, she just gets the information, and one lady was in the room and she told the lady what to do and the lady didn't listen. But she did tell a case in where a woman came to her and she told the woman, "Hey, do not marry this guy. He's going to abuse you. He's going to put you in the hospital, and by the third time you're gonna know that you should have listened to me." That's what she literally and it
Mm.
happened. Um and then she did say she is if she reads someone, she can definitely tell if they've done anything wrong. And then she can also see if they're going to die within 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but she did say that there is the free will and that people can like she has let them know things that have changed their outcome though. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
she was just it was very interesting. She's very spiritual, but she's also a Christian, and it was just very, very good. I mean, it was just very interesting. So, and I did get a
Mm.
picture of her. So
Oh,
I'm gonna
cool.
post it. So true story. So very cool. So
Now was she the psychic involved in the Sandra Williams case? Was that the one that she
mm,
talked about? There was one case we had done that she had been consulted. I just don't remember the case.
I cannot remember if she was on Sandra's case or not.
I
It
know
seemed like
she's
there
been
was a psychic.
consulted.
hmm
Yeah.
I would love to consult her on Jared Green. So
Yeah,
that would be really
definitely.
cool. But yeah, so it was a really cool weekend, and super thanks also to First Security Bank because they did sponsor us for the event. And yes, definitely bank better with First Security Bank, people. My favorite bank. So anywho, so you ready to talk about the Allen House?
Yeah. Yeah. What have you got?
Okay. I got a lot, and I fell down a lot of rabbit holes, and then more and more and more. And there was so much good information out there. Of course, I told you I fell into the rabbit holes of ancestry. So
I
it
do
was,
that all the time.
oh, it was just all consuming. And I spent a lot of time researching on this one just because it was so good. It was just so good. So, anywho, but yeah, so I'll get started. But yeah, guys, we're excited. And this one's a spooktacular. Okay. So in 2007, the Spencer family purchased a beautiful 100-year-old home in Monticello, Arkansas. Little did they know that they would be embarking on an amazing and terrifying journey that kind of changed their whole, probably life, I would think it seems to. So now let's go back in time to Monticello in the year range of 1906. Okay.
Hmm.
So 1906. That sounds like a fun time, doesn't it? That's a long
No,
time
not
ago.
really. I don't think
No.
they had flushable toilets in most places in Arkansas then, so no.
Flushable toilets.
Yes.
Yeah, I like a good flushable toilet. So,
Yeah.
myself. So, during that time, Monticello had about 1,800 residents, and the city was the county seat for Drew County, which is located in the southeast section of our state. So, a lot of people like to tell me when I'm wrong about my geography, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So Monticello is actually about 2 hours southeast of Searcy if you're traveling by car. So some people said it was 3 hours, but it is just 2 hours. Monticello had a thriving downtown even at that time with lots of stores. They had a cotton gin in town. They had a bank. They had restaurants. They had hotels. They had some schools. In fact, even the Arkansas Baptist children's home was set up in Monticello. So they had that set up. And then they had the railroad line, which was connecting people, to Little Rock and from Little Rock, which is our state's capital, and then to Texas and then to Mississippi. So it was pretty much a crossroads to all of these places at that time. And you could get even from, which we'll talk about this, even the railroad down to New Orleans and then even up to St. Louis. So there was also a university already called Heinemann, plus a state agricultural school called SAS, which opened right there kind of in 1910, so right at the same time frame. So lots was going on there. So, and that SAS school would later become the University of Arkansas Monticello, but we're talking much later. So that didn't actually open until 1971, which was actually the reason that brought the Spencer family from Oklahoma to Monticello in 2005. So a man named Joseph, and he went by Joe Lee Allen, and his wife, I've heard the pronunciation is Caddy. It's spelled interesting. It's spelled Caddye, but Caddy Allen live a very privileged life, and they had three daughters. So you think you have it bad with three sons, but they had
Mhm.
three girls. They had Lonnie, which was their eldest. Then they had Ladell, and then their youngest was Louie. So do you see a theme?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
A lot of
love
L's.
I know. I love when people do that. And this is interesting to me because really Lonnie and Louie, I mean, those are kind of boy names,
They
or what I
are.
think of. So, um,
It's Louie's a cute name for a girl.
it is a cute name. And I like Lonnie. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting. I mean, I feel like maybe they were progressive or maybe not. I don't know. But maybe that was just the thing then. But the Allens had also had a boy and they had named him Walter, but he had passed away and he was actually born
Oh.
before Louis, but he had passed when he was just 9 months old. So
Oh, that's so sad.
I know. So he didn't quite make it. And all their girls were pretty much they were born in like the 1892, 94 range, you know. The Allens they were already living in a really nice home on Main Street, and it says they already have like a live-in servant. And then Joe, he was a kind of a businessman. He was very businessy and he owned a livery stable. I don't know what that means, but he would eventually own a lot of things. Would eventually own an automobile dealership that sold automobiles, horses, mules, buggies. He owned a hotel. He eventually owned a private school.
Oh,
He,
wow.
this is funny. He owned, I don't know why it's funny to me, but he owned a horse-drawn hearse for that he rented out for funerals. I guess before people really had cars or hearses.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it was a horse-drawn hearse.
A
And
horse-drawn hearse.
mhm.
That's interesting.
So I guess it's like, I don't think, have you been to Disney World, in the
No.
Haunted Mansion? Okay. So they have the Haunted Mansion, and right in front of it is like one of those black horse-drawn carriages that's a hearse. That's what
Yeah.
I'm kind of envision, I guess. Just very old school. So anywho, he would also be president of a bank, and he was president of the Fair Association. So, and he would own and invest in lots of real estate. So he owned a lot of land, a lot of businesses. I mean, he just owned a lot of stuff. He was really a self-made man, and he was evidently hardworking and just good at business.
Hmm.
So in 1906, Joe, he was doing really well for himself. So he wanted to build a new home. So he hired a man named Sylvester Hotchkiss. Yes, that's an interesting name,
That's an
Hotchkiss.
interesting name.
Yes, and Hotchkiss was a very popular architect in Monticello, and he had already built a lot of fine places like the Pope House, it said, and the Lambert Home, many of maybe the buildings downtown, and still some of his items that he's built, like the Allen House, are on the historical registry. So he built a lot of nice buildings or homes that were there to stand, so for the test of
Hmm.
time. The builder that worked with him, his name was Joseph White. So he was the builder, and then Hotchkiss was the architect. So Joe hired these men because he wanted the finest home in the whole town at that time. So he wanted it to be like the premier home in town. So the best one. So the house that they would design is a combination of neoclassical, Gothic, and Queen Anne designs. It kind of reminds me of the Crescent
Hmm.
because remember the Crescent, they use so many different designs and it really
Yeah.
creates like this whole kind of an original and special type of building. Like it's really beautiful. Like I feel like there's nothing really to describe the Allen House. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's been a while. I went before the pandemic, but it's
Yeah.
it's absolutely gorgeous. So I know what you mean.
I mean, I really like that they mesh these designs, I guess, and it's just really cool. So it said that the house was built at 713 North Main Street and that the original Allen house was moved to make room for this bigger house. But that's kind of weird because the current address of the Allen house is 705 North Main. So I'm not really sure if there's just the records are a little skewed or if now I did find this from my mortgage years that
Mhm.
especially over 100 years addresses changed so that they got renumbered, houses got renumbered. So I don't know if it was just a renumbering deal or if I don't know, but the current house, if you were to look it up, it's 705 North Main in Monticello. And again, it just happens that things get
Yes.
weird.
Yeah.
So now, kind of spending a moment on the amazing house. So there's kind of differing accounts also on the size of the home. So one record said it was 6,500 square feet. I found another record that said it was like 9,500 square feet, which is
Oh,
huge,
wow.
which it is
What I
not.
wouldn't do with that much space,
I
man.
mean, oh my goodness. I mean, even 5,000 square feet, which actually, so when you look at the tax records, the house sits on 1.647 acres, which that's a very impressive size for like a lot in a town, period, to have a house built. So they had a really nice sized lot. That is an impressive lot. And the house is
Right.
said to be 5,500 square feet, which that sounds accurate. I mean, it's a large house, but I know it's not almost 10,000 square feet because we've been in it and it's just not. But it is
Yeah.
currently 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. And at one point, I do think that when they said 9,500 square feet, so when the house was built, they did probably count all those porches. They counted the
Mhm.
attic space,
Mhm.
which was the third floor,
Right.
because at that time, I'm sure there was no heating and air going on. So they just count all
Ugh.
that square foot. And then also so when the house was built, they also had like a carriage house or something. So I think they
Oh,
were
cool.
accounting for like all that space. But it did say that the timber for the home is said to be 400-year-old oak and pine trees that came from Joe's land. So he owned some timberland, and these were like really nice trees from his own land. So, the front Okay, yeah. The front of the house is, like we said, it's breathtaking. It has a massive portico held up by like Grecian columns, so it's just really impressive looking. On each side end of the front of the house, there are three-story octagonal turrets. I don't know how to say it, but I think they're turrets. And the entrance of the home is framed by beautiful stained glass. So kind of the front of the house is very impressive. I mean, it's just very nice. So I actually toured the house in December of 2016. I had to go back to my pictures and find them because I did not remember what year. Um, but I remember
That's what
this.
I'm doing right now. I'm
Uh,
looking back at some pictures because I went,
what
I
year?
guess it was 2019.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you remember what do you remember that like your favorite
I
part?
Well, I had never been there, and it was one of those dinner and
Hmm.
a ghost tour type thing, so we weren't there
Yes.
very long,
Uh-huh.
but I just remember the architecture just blowing me away because, there that was sitting right there in the middle of Monticello, and it looked like it was very European to me,
Hmm.
so
Yes, like just amazing, huh? We did the dinner with a ghost thing too, and they kind of sit you down in the dining room and they feed you and they kind of went over the whole history of the house. But I remember them talking about how the stained glass was especially hand blown stained glass brought up from New Orleans. And articles that I found also said so they had like artisans come in from St. Louis and they actually made all the carved like window frames. And then the glass, of course, was specially made because to fit those curved windows, they had to have curved glass. And so that was a super big deal, super expensive endeavor. I mean, can you imagine your windows being curved? I mean, that just, I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays
That
to get
sounds
something like that,
expensive.
yes. I mean, we're talking about, people think a Pella window is expensive. I mean, and those are not, handmade. I'm sure. I mean, there's just nothing like that anymore. So that just is crazy to think about. But it still exists, and so at least it was when we were there, and I think it's still there. That it was original to the house, but their tin ceiling above the dining room was literally hand beaten into ornate art, which was like a little sea of little cherub faces, the little angel faces. And so they
Oh,
kind of,
yeah, I do remember that.
and I remember, I remember looking at, because I don't know about you, but those freak me out. The
The
little,
little cherubs?
yes, they freak me out. I don't know why. And I remember looking up at them being like, this is freaking me out. And I would totally paint over them if this was my house.
Yeah,
So,
I think I have a photo of that somewhere. I have to look.
I know, so yes, I don't have a I only had a couple of pictures left, which I'll post the pictures that I have. Um but they did try to sell the house, and so there are tons of good pictures online that did show the tin ceiling still.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's very interesting. But yeah, so cherubs freaking me out. So now, okay. So there was kind of no expense spared. So Joe was like, I want the best. I want it all. They did it all. And the house had amazing chandeliers. It had hardwood floors. It had ornate staircase and molding throughout. Just kind of all that typical charm and depth in a house that was built in that time period and with the kind of money we're talking about. So it was just amazing and special, and it's really just a treat to behold. I mean, it really reminds me of the Hornibrook Mansion. That place was just as pretty. I mean, different, but just as pretty, just as charming. You just can't make those 100-year-old houses. I mean, there's no way to replicate that. So, at the time the house was built, like I said, there was a large carriage house on the north side of the lot, which was living quarters for maids and such. So they did have live-in servants living with them. The carriage house is no longer on the property from what I remember, and also based on the tax records and everything and all the videos that I watched, there's not the carriage house. I'm sure, I mean, it was 100 years old, made of wood. I'm sure at some point it just didn't make it and it was removed. And I know they put in like a back parking lot, so there's quite a good little parking pad for people. So, yes. So, little side note, the land where the house stands now was once the Roger Female Academy, which was built in 1857. And once the Civil War kind of was underway here in Arkansas, the school got turned into a hospital for wounded Confederate soldiers.
Oh, wow.
So
That's interesting.
I know, I thought that was very interesting. And I would think maybe could bow to some future activity that's there. I mean, just that land has a history, not, and even more than just the Allens. So, the family, the Allens, enjoyed really a very privileged life due to Joe's hard work and business sense. I mean, they were living good. They had a very good life there in Monticello. They were high society parties, society, all the things. In 1912, he opened up the hotel downtown and he called it the Allen Hotel. And he owned the buildings kind of around it, and he would rent out portions around the hotel and in the hotel. But also a little tidbit about the Allen Hotel. So it was 3 stories. So it was 3-story hotel. It had 40 rooms. So it had 40 rooms that it could rent. And it said that the Allens had a lot of grand parties there. And it just seems like a place that I would want to hang out.
Yeah. I got
But
I got similar vibes there than, that I did in the
mm,
Hornibrook Mansion for sure. Both
yeah.
places I would love to hang out. in the late
Hmm.
1800s, probably.
Oh yeah. This hotel would have been cool in downtown. So they sold the hotel in the 1920s. So they didn't keep it very long. But sadly the hotel burned down in 1943 when a fire broke out at the hardware store that was beside it. And it was said it was due to electrical issues, which I mean, what can you do? It's the 1940s. I mean, it happened. So I was sad because I
Man,
was
but we
like,
we
huh?
talk a lot about fires. I mean, in
We
that time period, seriously.
I know. I mean, it's so sad because, but I mean, everything was, they had fireplaces, electrical things that maybe weren't, obviously not the great code that we have now. And even now we have houses burned down, but nothing like back then. And then everything's made of wood. So it's just a tough time. It really is. So kind of around that same time as the opening of the hotel, Joe was an investor in some land, and he gets the opportunity to name a new town, like a whole town that's being kind of situated a little south of Monticello there. He names the town after his middle daughter, Ladell, and discusses, and okay, so I'm going to discuss the spelling. So he names it Ladell, Ladelle, but a lot of the time, her name is spelled Ladell without the E. And then she also, like, kind of as a nickname, she went by Dell. So some records just show Dell.
Mhm.
So anyway, but he did name it Liddell with the full E spelling. And so obviously, it says that he was very, you know, I mean, Liddell was kind of his favorite. So can you imagine being Lonnie and
Yeah.
being like, how
She was the
rude?
middle.
No, Liddell was the middle. So Lonnie was
Oh, the
the,
middle was the favorite.
yes.
Hmm. Interesting.
So, I mean, you have three daughters and you name the new town Liddell. I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't even name it Caddy after his wife. So, okay, Joe. That's all I got to say on that. So, Liddell is a town, is pretty much just a road now. I went on what do you
mhm,
call it, the Google Earth and looked around
yeah,
at it. And so basically it is Liddell is a road, so you can go on Liddell Road, and it has a Baptist church and a cemetery beside the church and some houses, but basically it's rural, it's a lot of land, and it's not even a town. Everything, the address wise, is listed as Monticello. So Liddell really didn't take off. It was really just an area, and so the town didn't really take off. But it is called the Liddell Baptist Church and Liddell Cemetery and Liddell Road. So those still exist to this day. So yeah, so Liddell still has her actual spot in Arkansas.
that's very cool.
Yeah, and it's not Lonnie. Do you feel like it's kind of like the Brady Bunch thing, like Marsha, Marsha, and
Marsha,
like
Marsha,
like
poor
Liddell, Liddell,
Jan. Yeah,
Liddell. But see, Jan was a middle child, but in this case,
that's what I'm saying.
Liddell.
Isn't there lots of research about middle child syndrome?
But yeah, but Liddell is the middle, so now so it's kind of reverse in the Allen family. Like we're gonna
Yeah,
favor the
seems
middle.
yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, you kind of favor your middle. I'm just kidding.
N
You love them all
No,
equally.
I love them all equally. Now, my middle is the easiest to deal with, I will say that. He
He
is the
is.
easiest child to deal with, besides
Mhm.
the teenager and the toddler, so, I mean, it's easy to soar like an eagle when you're in a room full of turkeys, you know?
Ryan being the turkey. No, I'm just kidding. Ryan's cute. Okay, so getting back to Liddell and her being favored by her dad. In 1914, Liddell was 20 and she marries a man named Boyd Randolph Bonner, and he was a little bit older. He was 23. And it said he was very handsome and he was very well connected. And I'm sure you can imagine Liddell probably had a really lavish wedding. I mean, the woman had a town named after her.
Yeah, I'm sure she had a big wedding.
I'm sure she did. And the following year, Lonnie, so Ladell actually got married before Lonnie. And I know that this is probably, I mean, that probably was weird in itself, but Lonnie got married the next year and she married a German immigrant. I guess he came from German immigrants because he was born here, but his name was Carl Leidinger, I guess. And it looks like in the records, like the tax assessors records or the census records, he was working for the family, and him and like they were there in Monticello and he worked, and it said he worked in the hotel business. So he was working at the Allen Hotel, is what I'm gathering. So interesting tidbit about Carl. So his name was spelled Karl, but during that time, so the World War I happened, and he did actually enlist in the army, but he actually enlisted like a couple months before the war ended. So he really, and then he was, it looked like he was, what do you call that? Unenlisted, or like he got out of the army, like discharged. So he was,
Discharged.
yeah, so he was only in the army for 2 months, and he changed the spelling of his name to Carl because, in that time frame, Germans weren't really liked. So being a German immigrant or of German immigrants wasn't really something. And a little tidbit, this also happened to Queen Elizabeth's family. In that time frame, they wanted to get away from their German, lineage, and so they changed their surname to Windsor.
That's interesting. I did not know
Yes.
that.
Yes, that's from my all my True Royalty channel watching. So, true story. Okay, so in 1915, Liddell and Boyd gave birth to Elliot Allen Bonner. So they had a little boy and they called him Allen. So he would go by Allen. And he'll also have a nickname later on as Duke. And we'll discuss him kind of later on in detail. Okay. So tragedy hits the family hard. A couple years later, Joe passes away suddenly from a heart
Oh,
attack. His actual death certificate says acute indigestion, which I did look that up because I'm like, I mean, if you say you have acute indigestion now that you died from, that's concerning.
yes, it is.
But that's just what they kind of called it because they didn't really, I mean, this is 1917. They didn't really, know what was going on, but it is really a heart. So basically he had a heart attack. And you're going to see this as kind of a theme in the Allen family. So,
Oh, wow. Goodness.
yes. So he was actually he died suddenly while demonstrating an automobile to a prospective buyer. So he was
Really?
working and he was with a buyer, and he was only 54 years old.
Yeah, that's
So
young.
I know it is that, considering I'm staring 44 in the face.
Yeah.
So the death of Joe was said to devastate Liddell, and it said that she would never get past it. But this was devastating for their whole family, obviously. I mean, this was their patriarch, this was their dude. So another little tidbit about the family. So Joe and Katie really had a lot of tragedy. Obviously, we've already talked about how they had lost their son Walter at 9 months old. But Joe and Katie, they both equally lost their dads at young ages. So I think Joe was 6 when his dad died, and then Katie was 4. And I believe they were both accidents, like tragic accidents that killed their fathers. So I guess it's just the norm when you live in the 1800s and early 1900s. I mean, I guess people just didn't live, they didn't live like they
No,
live now. So,
no, not at
so,
all.
so tragedy was just, I guess, a part of life, but I mean, it's awful. So it just sounds bad. So after Joe passes, Katie actually steps up, or Caddy runs all the businesses. And actually, it said that she would continue to grow the wealth of the family. I mean, she would just fortune. So she did good. She stepped up. She does have help from Lonnie and Carl. So they actually moved back into the Allen home. So after Joe passes, and it's written that they paid Caddy $10 a month in rent.
Oh,
So
wow. I wish
basically,
I wish I could find a place for $10 a month.
well, and I'm trying to think. I mean, this is the 1917. So I don't know. I know my parents talk about back in the 60s, no, late 60s, early 70s that they were their rent and their wages. I mean, I think that's a pretty decent rent,
Yeah.
but not, I mean, hardly much, but to us especially. I mean, $10 gets you not even barely a Big Mac meal at McDonald's now.
You can't get a Big Mac for $10 anymore, a meal.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
I remember when Big Mac meals were $5. Okay,
Yeah, me
Amber is
too.
cuddling this cat, and the cat has his eyes closed and he is just in heaven. Okay.
Yeah. You're probably picking up the purring too.
Oh, I love a good purr. Okay, so the house basically Joe died. The house has Caddy, and then the youngest Louie, and then Lonnie and Carl move in. Okay, so the four of them are living in the house. They have the servants. They're doing the business scene. Okay. So in 1921, Louis gets married to a man named Robert Hell Jones, and they end up moving to Memphis. They move away and they end up raising a family and have three children off in Memphis, okay? And I'm guessing that's where Robert was from. So in 1920, we're going to go a little backwards. So Ladell and Boyd and their son, Allen, they're living in Texas. And it said that Boyd, he operates an oil rig. So he's in the oil business down in Texas. And we don't know a lot about what's going on with Ladell and Boyd and Allen kind of during this time. But by 1925, this is interesting. So there is a record that shows Ladell, and she's by herself, but she calls herself Dell. And she
Dell.
is on a ship that's coming back from Cuba.
Oh, that's interesting.
Cuba. And it was coming into Miami. And at that time, she said that her address was Monticello. Okay.
That's fun.
And that
Did
was
you buy the big ancestry package this
I
week?
I don't know, but it was interesting. This ship was the Governor Cobb. So this was the ship she was coming back in. So she got married in what, 1914? So by 1925, she was on a ship coming back from Cuba by herself. This lady was living large.
I was just to say that's yeah,
That's something. I mean, for her to go on, I mean, to
on
Cuba
her own.
on her
That's
own.
unheard of.
Like
Well, I
maybe
mean,
now maybe she
around
was with
here maybe.
friends. I
Yeah, she
mean,
could have been.
she could have been with friends, but I mean, she wasn't with anybody that she was related to, and she was calling herself Dell. So she was, I mean, she didn't have her son. She left her son too. So, okay, so that's just very interesting to me. So 2 years later, by September 1927, her and Boyd filed for divorce in Arkansas.
Couldn't see
So
that coming.
yeah. Her little Cuba trip. She filed against him with the reason being listed as abuse. So not sure,
Yikes.
yes, this is 1927, Amber, a divorce in 1927 of a
Yeah.
society woman of her, upbringing and blah blah blah. This is kind of
Right.
salacious for her at that time period. I would think the whole town would be buzzing, and this was probably like not in the newspaper because the family wouldn't allow
Oh,
that. But
yeah.
I'm
I'm
sure
sure it was
Caddy,
straight up gossip.
I'm sure
Yeah,
Caddy was
all the
not
time.
happy about this. Okay.
Yeah. Every time you say caddy, I think about Mean Girls.
Oh, no, me too. Katie, Caddy. Um, and this is maybe speculation, but I did, obviously I didn't find any diaries or letters, but there were some articles that were written, and they thought that Boyd had like a bad drinking problem and that he was abusive. And so literally the divorce paperwork says abuse. So yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, so again, she had been in Cuba in 1925. I have to say it again because that's just blowing my mind. And
It
she had,
yeah,
and
it
she,
is. Me
yeah,
too.
and she was already living in Monticello. So I think what happened was they go off to Texas. Boyd's not being very nice, and she comes back with probably Alan and moves back home. So, and then she just went on a little trip to Cuba. And then she finally filed for divorce. I'm sure that kind of thing. I'm sure they were separated a long time before she actually filed. I'm sure there was a lot of grief and family struggle,
Mhm.
So, but another interesting find in the newspapers and such was Ladell had purchased some property in Little Rock in 1919. So this was actually a little after her father passed, and it was in the right edition of Little Rock, which is the area right now of 19th Street and Arch.
Right.
And she paid $6,200, and that was about double the price of a new home in 1919. So building a new home. So it must have been a really nice place. There is no other information. It doesn't ever show her living in Little Rock, but for some reason she bought a very nice place in Little Rock in
Maybe she
1919.
was planning to go there, but she didn't.
Maybe. I don't know what happened there. The online records do not go back that far. I looked,
Right.
anyway. So there's not really anyway, if anyone knows, call me.
If
So
anybody knows,
if
call
anybody
me.
knows more about that situation in 1919, that land deal, call me. I'm curious
Yeah.
about that. So that was just a little tidbit. But she was living in Texas at that time with Boyd. So anyway, not sure how long she owned the Little Rock property. But in the meantime, with whatever Liddell was going through, so Ladell had her stuff going on. Lonnie and Carl were living with Caddy, and they had Carl Jr. So they had Carl Jr. and
Is
they're
that the name of a hamburger place?
I think it's Hardy's little cousin,
Okay. I
which
thought so.
I have a little funny story about Hardy. So you know how it's cursive?
Yeah.
Hardy's is spelled in cursive. And Elle would look like one time we were like, "Where do you want to eat?" And she goes, "I really want to eat Handy's."
Handies.
And we were like, me and Daryl are looking at each other like, "Where?" And she's like,
That's
"Handy's."
funny.
And we're like, and we don't know what she's talking about. And then it hits us, Hardy's.
Parties. I kind of like Handies better. I like
and then
that.
and then Carl Jr.
Carl Ch
Yeah. So so Carl Jr.'s born and they all live with Caddy. And I'm sure Liddell's, she's coming back home. She's dropping in. So by the census of 1930, Liddell's son is living with Caddy. Okay. So he's
Mhm.
1930, he's living with Caddy. It does not list dad and mom. So his dad evidently moved out to the West after the divorce. Like he went out and he ended up in California and Oregon and out there. Well, it said that Liddell by the 1930s is living in Memphis and she's managing a hotel, and under her census, like she's the head of the house, but in her household, it shows a widowed person named Clyde Wilson. And
Clyde.
so the person that wrote this article about this, they put in parentheses that this was her lodger, like trying to make something of this, quote unquote. But I did find there's nothing nefarious about Clyde. Clyde is a woman.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Clyde is a woman. If they had looked kind of harder at those records, they would have noticed that. So Clyde was actually a woman. She was exactly Liddell's age. She was 34 or so at that time. So to me, it sounds like Liddell was just helping out a friend. She just basically had a boarder, a woman that
Okay.
had been widowed that probably needed a place to live, and I'm sure Liddell had a nice place,
Right.
So she seems to live it up, wherever she goes with her cities and her Cuba
Her
trips and
cities.
her big house in Little Rock she never even lived in.
She never moved into.
She never moved into. So yeah, and it looks like Clyde actually lived a very long life and she was from Mississippi if you want to know more about Clyde Wilson.
I
But
like her name.
yeah, so
I wish my name was Clyde.
yeah, and it's spelled Clide. I thought that was cute.
That is cute. There's some cute
Hmm.
names in this story.
There's a lot of cute names. Hodgkiss. Oh, there's more cute names coming too. Kind of another tidbit. So with the Allens living, so the Allen house, so they have the Allen house. So you have Lonnie's son Carl there, and the third floor, and then you have like Allen living there. So you have teenagers living there. Okay, you have the cousins living there. So the third floor of the Allen house has a really large attic. Remember the really large attic? It's kind
I
of the third.
do. I do remember that.
So around town in the 1930s, this attic space, this third floor, is known as the party place for
The
teenagers.
party place.
So I mean, they had teenagers. So I'm imagining like a really fun and just a full house with lots of laughter and boys running around, like I kind of get
Yeah.
those vibes. I don't know. So it's just a very fun situation, a privileged situation, a nice house and situation. But yeah, so that was in the 30s. So by 1933, I'm going back to Allen. So Allen is Ladell's son. So he is enrolled as a journalism student at Arkansas A&M College.
Oh, cool.
And he does
It's
write
right
for the
up
college.
my alley.
I know he writes for the college newspaper, The Southerner. And he's known to write very funny, humorous articles. So that's what his gift is. He's got a lot of sense of humor. In 1935, he transfers to Baylor University in Texas, and he works as a reporter and feature writer for the Baylor Daily Laureate.
Oh, wow.
And
Go him.
I know, and he is a big member of a club called the Nose Brotherhood, which is
The
just
what brotherhood?
nose, like your nose.
Oh, like your nose on your face? Okay.
Yes. And it's basically a college club of jokesters and pranksters. So it is
Yeah.
literally a
Oh my
club
God.
of people that, I mean, this kind of reminds me of, I'm going to Harry Potter and um, oh, and the Redheads brothers, how they have the
Oh,
joke
yeah.
shop.
Fred
Fre-
and
Fred and
Fred and George.
Yes, I'm thinking of them. I don't know what reason, but anyway, but it just kind of sounds again. This Alan is just, I don't know, a party fun person. I don't know. He just sounds like fun, and it sounds like he likes to have a good time. So, in 1936, Alan, which again he's called Duke, so he goes by Duke as well. He is now the managing editor of the Baylor Daily. So evidently he's got a lot of his grandpa in him, and he's hardworking, and he's just, going through the ranks. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead. Oh, in 1940, the census, we know that Ladell has kind of quit life in Memphis by then, and she is listed under her mom's home. So basically, her mom is head of household in the Allen house. It said that Lonnie lives there and Carl lives there and Liddell lives there. It doesn't say anything about Carl Sr. So that's a different story, which we'll talk about later, but it's them living there, okay, in the home. And this was by 1940. By 1944, Duke, her son, is now 28 years old, and he's been living in New York City, okay? So he is employed as the editor of the radio division of the Associated Press in New York City. So that's pretty impressive. Like,
That is very impressive,
yes,
actually.
so this was his life. However, he comes down with a sickness, and he goes into the Gotham hospital there, and he dies of pneumonia.
Oh gosh.
I
How
know.
sad.
I know. So another tragedy. And it said that he had been living in New York City for about 3 years. So he had maybe moved there by 1937 or so, or
Right.
1941, sorry. And he was single. So he never married. He never had kids. They do transfer his body home to Monticello, and he's buried there in the family cemetery. So this is where Joe is buried. This is where
I wonder how
Walter
much it was to transfer all the way to Arkansas.
in 1940s. I don't know.
Yeah, probably a lot of money.
Probably, I would think. I don't know. But yeah, he's buried in the basically in the family cemetery where all the family is in Monticello. Um, this, of course, Liddell, even though she didn't, I mean, she hadn't lived under the same roof as, Alan in many years. So, I mean, I don't know their relationship. It doesn't talk about the relationship, but this is her one and only son, and he's died at the age of 28. And they're not sure. There's speculation that perhaps Alan had a weak heart,
Mhm.
kind of hereditary basis.
Right.
Um, but at least his granddad made it into his 50s. I mean, he was literally 28, but we don't know if he smoked. We don't know we don't know anything about his
Yeah.
lifestyle. And
And
it's
what was
the
life
40s.
expectancy? Yeah, life
Yeah.
expectancy in the 40s probably wasn't as high as now. I
Yeah,
don't know
but
what it
that's
was.
that's still super tragic. I can't even imagine how, I mean, Liddell's lost her dad, lost her son. Anywho, just sad.
Very
So
sad. Lots of tragedies.
I know it's not getting any better. So
Oh gosh.
listen to this. So more sadness hits the family literally in the same year. So Allen died in January of 1944. So Louie, the youngest girl, she dies in September of 1944. She
Oh
is only
gosh.
46 years old, and her death certificate says cardiac failure. And
What?
yes, and it shows that she has an enlarged heart and hypertension.
Mhm.
So she definitely had heart issues.
Yeah.
I mean, this is awful. I
Yeah.
mean, and she has three children, three children. So very young, 46, Amber, 46. I'm just saying that again. I mean, I'm going to be 44. Anywho, moving forward, another tragedy. So in 1948, Ladell's ex-husband, so this is Boyd, he passes away at the age of 56. So he's out in California. He's laid to rest there in a tomb, and it
Man, these
says
people didn't live long at
they
all.
were not living. I mean, Caddy is like surviving. I think Caddy's mom lived a long time, but I mean, the people on Joe's side, well, and this is Boyd, her Liddell's husband. I don't know, but I know Boyd has some issues, and he was laid to rest. And they put up an actual, like, his headstone actually had his name, and then it had Allen's name as well, like his son's name. But Allen was definitely not buried with his dad. He was buried in Monticello, so that's a little confusing. But he does have a tombstone with his dad, so it's like a
Mm-hmm.
combination one.
Yeah.
So obviously, the 1940s were especially hard on the Allen house with all the death and kind of more tragedy. So this was, 1948. So at the end, so December 25th, 1948, literally Christmas Day, Liddell consumes mercury cyanide in her bedroom at the Allen house.
Oh gosh.
Yes, which is said, she was in her bedroom, which is said to be the master suite. I mean, of course. I
Hmm.
mean, she has a town. She went to Cuba. She had a
Yeah.
house she didn't
Of
even live in. I
course.
mean, she was it. She is taken to the Mac Wilson Hospital there in Monticello, less than a block from her home, and is attended by her physician, Dr. Johnny Price. So Liddell is in hospital. I mean, she is sick as sick can be. She has taken this cyanide, and her body is being ravaged by the poison. So
Mm.
the doctors cannot get a handle on it, but she suffers for a whole week. And
Oh gosh.
January 2nd, 1949, so she made it to the new year, Liddell passes away. And on the death certificate, the truth of the situation, is of course outlined, and it says, cause of death was mercury cyanide, and death was caused by, suicide. The
Suicide.
Yeah. So
Tragic.
yes, horribly tragic. So they hold her funeral on January 4th in the actual Allen house. So all these funerals are being held at the Allen house.
Creepy to the
So,
max right
so,
there.
so we're talking
Creepy to the
Joe,
max.
we're talking all of them.
Well,
So,
and I had a
and that's
conversation
what
about
they did
that.
back then.
Well, I was going to say that I had a conversation about that with my grandmother a long time ago about how they
Hmm.
would put them out in the living room, and
Hmm.
there. I think there's a song by Ray Stevens or someone called "Sitting Up with the Dead," and that's
About
honestly
that.
what they would do. And then there's that book. Did you read the book or did you not? That I gave you, the Gone to the Grave book
I
on
read a
Ozark.
lot of it,
Okay, so
but
I
not
think
all
there's
of
a
it.
chapter in there about the sitting up with the dead as
There
well.
is and there's a lot about. Of course, it's called Gone to the Grave, but there's
Gone
a
to the
lot of
Grave.
interesting death stories about what they used to do back in the day. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, this was kind of a normal thing. But yeah, Liddell was literally, her funeral was held at the house. I'm sure she was, hanging out at the house. Her body was, but they did
Ugh.
bury her in the Oakland cemetery with her father, her brother, her sister, and her son. I mean, oh my goodness. So
So
Patty,
sad.
she seals off Liddell's room in memorial to Liddell. And it said, no one will enter the room for 37 years. So we're talking from 1949 to 1985. It said that
It
no
was
one enters that room.
it was just as it was.
It was
Wow.
just as it was. I mean, she Yeah, she did not let anyone move in. They didn't clean it up, nothing. Like it was Ladell's room. Yeah. So the newspaper entries obviously do not mention anything about the suicide. They describe Ladell as living, her entire life there in Monticello, which we know didn't happen, where she was Cuba, where she was beloved. I can't get over it, but she was beloved by a wide circle of friends, and we know she lived other places, so that was what was written, and this was in the Monticellian newspaper. A brief eulogy on page 3 describes her as follows. So, possessed of a charming personality and lovable disposition, she believed that to be loved was to love others. She practiced her philosophy of life in her everyday living, never feeling that anything was too hard to do for a friend. Oh,
Oh, that's
I
sweet.
know, it was very sweet. Later, people state that this entry would have been due to Liddell's social standing and her family's position in society, and that nothing unsavory would ever be posted about Liddell or about her death. So, in real life, what they've said is that Liddell was suffering secretly from alcoholism, which contributed to her suicide. So that's what they thought at the time, that she, and plus the fact that all of the death. I mean, her son, 4 years
Yeah,
before she did this, her son
yeah,
was, he died of pneumonia. Her dad was gone. Her sister had died, like all this death. So
right.
that's what they thought. She was, dealing with depression. She was an alcoholic. That's what they thought. So this event obviously devastates the family. And not 100% positive what is going on with Lonnie and her family throughout the 40s, because like I said, Lonnie in the 1940 census is shown living with Caddy, but not her husband. And I did find, so Carl, he had moved in with his mother. I don't know what happened if he was taking care of his mother, but Carl
Mhm.
Sr., Lonnie's husband, went to live with his mother during that time. And I don't know if him and Lonnie were separated. They never divorced and they would be together again, but they weren't together at that time, okay? So that's very interesting. And I don't know what the deal was. But by 1950, Lonnie is shown to be living with Carl Sr., and they live in Little Rock. Not in Liddell's house that she owned, but they live in Little Rock, and he was shown as he owned a pawn shop. So we're gonna cover Carl Jr. kind of a little bit later on because he'll be important in this story. Okay, so in 1954, the amazing matriarch of the family, Caddy, dies at the good ripe age of 83. Doesn't show why she died. Hopefully just 83ness. Oh no, it does show why
83.
she I do get into that. So she was also laid to rest in Oakland Cemetery beside her husband Joe and with her 3 children. So in the 1940s, she had actually survived a broken hip and had a surgery. But
Mhm.
she broke her hip again. It's not known if she fell or whatever happened. I assume she fell, but when she fell, she did not recover from that broken hip.
Yeah.
So that's what
Wow.
happened. So obviously, her side of the family genes kind of had more longevity than the Allen side. Okay.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like this might
Mm-hmm.
have been something that was just they were genetically predisposed for, with some
Mm-hmm.
of these heart issues, or,
Yes.
that kind of
And
thing.
maybe just something that even nowadays would easily be caught. Maybe, you know, how people are, they say that, oh, like they had a hole in their heart at birth and, like
Mhm.
easy,
Yeah.
easy things that they fix now, so there could just be that, or, maybe they just really had, what do you call that? Just, like early onset of heart diseases and hypertension. You never know. But
Yeah, it could have
nowadays,
been hypertension that went from, person to
mhm,
person in that family. Could
yes.
be.
Yeah, definitely. So interesting. But so after her mother's death, Lonnie actually dies the year after at
Mm.
63.
Oh,
Now
wow.
listen to this. It's stated on her death certificate as vascular hemorrhage. And I cannot read. There's a word before vascular, and I'm shocked. Okay, people talk about how bad my handwriting is,
Oh,
but
the
the
old records, they're awful.
yes, they
Yeah.
are awful. Like I know it's I can read cursive. I wrote cursive, but I mean, it is awful cursive. So it does, I can make out vascular hemorrhage, and it also mentions hypertension. So she obviously had a stroke with the heart issues in the family history. So she is dead
Mm-hmm.
by 63. And she is also buried with the
Good
family in
grief.
Oakland. Yes.
Yeah.
Her husband, Carl, is still living. He doesn't die until another 20 years later. And he's actually buried at the Little Rock National Cemetery. So it looks like he had spent, he did do 2 months of World War One. I
Two
don't know what,
months.
2 months. But he was also, it said that he registered for World War II. And so he probably, he did obviously was a veteran. And so he was buried as a veteran in the Little Rock National Cemetery. It doesn't look like Carl Jr. had him an obituary or anything. So, and I couldn't find a death certificate on Carl Sr., so I have no idea. But he lived to be in his 80s. So he lived a long life. So now, as you can see, everybody's gone. Okay. Everybody's gone. It's
Yeah,
just
that's sad.
Carl Jr.
It's Carl Jr.
Carl Jr. Well, and Louis had some kids out in Memphis, but Carl Jr. is now the owner and caretaker of the Allen House. So this is 1955 with the death of his mom. He is it. Okay.
Right.
This is a little back stuff on Carl. Carl did well, just like Allen did well. So Carl ended up going to the University of Arkansas and going into medical school. So he also entered the Army Medical Corps, where he finished up his internships for medicine. And he
Hmm.
retired from the medical corps as a colonel. So he made it very high up in the ranks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
I know. He did get married, and his wife name is Betty, and they had 3 children. So they had 2 boys and a
Betty.
girl.
I like the
Betty.
name Betty.
You like Betty? I
Yeah, I
think
do.
of, for some reason, I think of Betty Broderick.
Oh, there's a
That's a
new Taylor
good
Swift
stuff.
song called Betty.
Oh,
That's
really?
cute. Well, it's not new. Gosh, it's not new. It's been out for
Oh,
years.
I like the word, but that kind of reminds me also not just of Betty Broderick, but she's such a Betty in Clueless. I don't know anyway.
Oh yeah.
Cute. It's cute. Betty is cute. So yeah. So upon Lonnie's death, Carl is living in Missouri and he is practicing medicine and he's just living his life. I mean, he has his own life in Missouri, he has his practice, he's very busy. So the Allen house becomes rental property and the
Hmm.
house is sectioned into apartments.
And what
So,
year did you say this was?
so he got the house in 1955. That's when
Okay.
Lonnie passed. So from 1955 to 1986. So just think for that 30 years or so, this is property. And the property is managed for Carl by a Mrs. Herschel Collins. And between those dates, and several tenants during this time have paranormal experiences in the home. So
Hmm.
one video I saw showed that these people were living in the home and they had, I guess they had let, there's a young couple, renting like an apartment there, and they heard some noises from the closet and they thought it was maybe one of their friends like hiding in the closet. And then when they opened the closet, like no one was there. So just
Oh,
stuff like that.
creepy.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just definitely people were seeing things and hearing things. Yeah. So I'm sure all of these paranormal experiences, I'm sure the whole town was buzzing. So this was
Yes.
also producing rumors around town about the house being haunted. And we're talking this house by that time was almost, I mean, it's 50 years old. So it wasn't
Hmm.
a new house either. I mean, it would have been older. So a woman in 1959 named Carolyn Wilson. So she lives in one of the apartments in the Allen house with her husband. And later on, about 7 years later, she writes and publishes a novel called The Scent of Lilacs, which is a romantic thriller set in the man it's set in a mansion and it's modeled on the Allen house. So she actually
Oh,
writes
cool.
so she writes a fiction novel, but it is kind of based on the Allen house. So Dr. Carl Lindinger Jr., Carl Jr. passes away in 1985. Okay. He is also 63.
Wow.
I mean, that is
Hmm,
exactly the same age as Lonnie when she passed.
that's weird.
That is weird. Okay, so his widow, Betty, sells the Allen house. So finally, the Allen house is getting out of the Allen family period at in 1985. So she sells the house to Bill and Bobby Payton. This is when Ladell's bedroom on the second floor is entered for the first time since January 1949.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I
Can you
wonder what it
imagine?
smelled like in there.
I know. The first thing that comes into my mind is like the dust. I mean, was no one going in and cleaning?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
freaking
I
me
keep
out.
having a Great Expectations, Miss Faversham kinda
Mm,
thought there, you know?
yes, like ugh. So it said that the Paytons discover a bottle of cyanide on a shelf in the closet. So
No
allegedly,
way.
they find the actual bottle.
Wow. Now that's creepy to the max.
That is so creepy. And I'm sure, I mean, just the stories. I mean, just the stories. Ugh. So the Paytons live in the home. They turn it so, it was sectioned off into the apartments, but they turn it into a home. And they lived there until 1995. And then they sell the home to a Vince and Dorothy Simmons. And this is 1995. So the home is again still used for private residence. It's not anything but a home. And from what I understand from the Spencers and the TV show that I watched about all this, so which I'll get into, they maybe had multiple homes. I think Dorothy and them were from Texas. So I don't think they live in the home full time. And I did find court records that Dorothy and Vince went through a divorce in 2003 that looks pretty nasty. And yeah, so I'm going to keep that in the back burner because I haven't thought about that. But Dorothy remains the owner of the house, I guess, or in control of the house. And so the Spencers actually, they come on the scene in 2005. So in 2005, the Spencers came to Monticello and he was looking into, of course, he was a professor and he was in Oklahoma at that time, but he was looking at a job there at the university. So for Mark Spencer, and it's Mark and Rebecca. And I believe they have two children, like two boys and a girl. So while they were visiting, Rebecca, Mark's wife, and she just explained this in articles and different things, but she was looking at the town and she found this very beautiful but rundown home on Main Street. And she just fell in love with the house. Like she couldn't really explain it. She just wanted it. She wanted to buy that house. It was not for sale, but she wanted to buy that house. So she told Mark the only way she would actually move to Monticello was if she could have that home. So she was like, if we can get that home, we'll do it. Because
Oh, wow.
I don't think he was very enthusiastic about it. I'm sure I can see this. This would probably be me and Daryl. I'd be like, I love it. And he'd be like, it's run down and it's an old and it's going to take a lot of money. Like, I can see this. So I think Rebecca was probably like, I want this. So according to Rebecca, they started to kind of inquire about the house and they even went to talk to a realtor. And the realtor kind of like shut them down, was like, you don't want that house. There's a history to that house. It's not for sale. You don't want that house. Like the realtor did not just kind of looked at them funny, like they were crazy. Um, and in fact, when they went around talking to people, everyone they talked to in Monticello, when they found out the house that they wanted, was like, it's haunted. It's haunted, and you don't want that house. Or they would say it has a bad history. So the Allen house at that time, this was 2005. I mean, this house was 100 years old. Like, and I don't think it was looking its best at this point. So this house was like the weird, creepy house in the town, okay? So it didn't have the best reputation. Kind of regardless of this, Rebecca still wanted the house. Like she was drawn to it. She couldn't explain it. She would pass by it like she wanted this house. So I think that the homeowner, Dorothy, kind of heard the, word on the street. This is a small town, USA. She heard that they wanted it. And I think eventually, like, she called Mark and kind of set up a meeting with them, according to what I've read and what I saw. And this was on A Haunting, the Allen House episode 4 of season 5. So you can watch that. But that was very interesting. But it kind of talks about all this. But it said that, Dorothy was like, oh, never sell the house. And then she actually met Rebecca. And then she told Rebecca that the house was telling her it was okay to sell to Rebecca and Mark. So you do get
Wow.
that.
I do. Yes, I do.
The
Sorry, I was trying to
house.
yeah, I was trying to unmute
Oh,
myself.
sorry.
Sorry.
The house was telling her. So the house was, I mean, obviously it was cool with that. So after kind of this was 2005 that they initially came into town. So they wouldn't actually purchase the house or finish up in escrow until 2007. So I don't know what happened in that 2 years. I have my own thoughts as a mortgage lender. I'm sure that there was probably maybe just some escrow issues, maybe tied up on Dorothy's side. And it could have even been so it is very hard to finance a house like that. It's
Yeah,
old. It's not like you can get a normal mortgage like a VA, FHA, conventional loan even. Like you might even have to get what's called like in-house financing on it just because it's old. I'm sure it had issues. So, and it was going to take some, work to get it back to like its glory and what it looks like,
former glory, yes.
yes, today. So Rebecca, even, before getting to officially purchase the house and move in, so like I said, she walked by the house a lot and she would see a woman sitting in the window of one of the bedrooms on the second floor. Like she could see her up there and she just thought it was Dorothy, like the owner.
Oh, I remember this story.
Yeah.
She
So,
said she told us this story at that dinner, I think.
yeah. So when she actually met Dorothy, she kind of asked Dorothy about it and then Dorothy like took her up to that bedroom, which was Ladell's old bedroom.
Oh,
And
wow. Creepy.
it was filled with boxes. Like Dorothy didn't use that room. Like it was totally filled with boxes. There was no way Dorothy was sitting at that window. And so Rebecca and Mark, they were skeptics. Like they didn't believe in ghosts. They weren't scared off about the ghosts. But that kind of got, them thinking, I mean, that there, is something maybe to this. So they do officially, like I said, purchase the house in October 2007. Evidently, that's when they get started. So they move in, they've got their children, they start right away on renovations, and kind of, how renovations go. They're
Yes,
expensive.
I do. Yes, I
And you can
do.
only imagine. So, it's in very good repair. I don't know how much work they did, but I'm sure it needed everything from roofing, plumbing, electrical, maybe flooring. There's no telling. It could have had some, typically old houses like that have either just some rot issues, foundation issues maybe. So, I'm sure they had a lot going on. So they were working on it. But also as soon as they moved in, the Spencers started experiencing things they couldn't explain. So,
Ooh.
yeah, there was a shadow man in the attic. So Mark
Was
saw
he
a shadow
shadow
man.
dancing like the Bee Gees?
Please sing that
Stop.
for me.
I
I
don't
can't.
even know how it goes.
Is it? I can't either. Like I can hear it in my head almost, but I can't like convey that. I
Yeah.
love the Bee Gees. They're so hilarious. But anyway, Rebecca would hear footsteps in the attic, and she literally thought there was an intruder. Like it was heavy footsteps above her head. She would climb the stairs to go to the attic and no one was there. Just stuff like that. And again, they're skeptics. Like they don't really believe in the ghost situations. They're also an antique Victrola in the
Oh,
home
yeah.
would just start playing music. It just start going.
Yeah,
No
I
big no
remember
big
them
deal.
talking about that too.
No big deal. I mean, if that happened to me and I was in that house, I'd be
I'd
like,
be out. Out.
I'll be running out that front door. Rebecca even had a run in with a lady on the second floor. So she kind of felt a presence. She would see the lady on the second floor. Like they were having a lot of activity. And kind
Sounds
of,
like it.
yeah. And likewise, they had people in the community coming up to the house. Like people would come up to the house, they knock on the
Just like
door.
gawkers, just
Yeah.
like to huh,
Yes. They would have
how
Gawker and
annoying.
they had people come up and knock and ask if they could see the house, like come in. And Rebecca and Mark were just like, no, like this is our house. Like, what do you mean? And she was like, would you let you into, like, no. Like, so, but as Rebecca and them got deeper and deeper into the renovations, Rebecca got the idea that the house is really interesting to the community, so maybe they should open the house up just for Halloween and charge people for tours
Cool.
just to make some money for renovations. I mean, it was
Yeah.
becoming very expensive. So that very Halloween in 2007, they had 600 people
No
come
way.
come through the house. I mean, they had no clue what was going to happen. They were going to charge
I
like
would be a nervous
$5.
wreck if that many people were in my house.
I would be.
600?
I mean, but 600 people paying $5, that helps them do something.
No. Yeah, no.
They had no clue that that many people would be, wanting to see the house, but that's what it was. So they were giving tours. And on the haunting show, it does show kind of like a reenactment. And it said that they had kind of a group of people in one of the bedrooms, and a
Uh-huh.
shirt evidently flew from the wardrobe and freaked every.
Sorry, I just got a mental picture of that.
Yes. Ladell threw a shirt out of the
Yeah.
wardrobe now. The shirt flew from the wardrobe and it freaked everyone out. And the guests on the tour, they were like, "You guys are doing that." Da, da, da. Like they thought that they were staging it. And the tour guide was like, "Oh my goodness." I don't know. It looked like it wasn't, I don't know if they got some like college kids to help them do the tours or whatever, but anywho, on that same tour, an older woman kind of came through the house, and upon leaving the tour, she was thanking the Spencers for letting her in, and then she told them that she saw a woman in an old dress, standing looking very sad in the second floor near Liddell's old room. So
Aw.
that's kind of the first time the Spencers are hearing that other people are seeing what they're seeing. So, so after
Yeah.
all this, the Spencers decide, and they had a lot of people reaching out to them to do paranormal investigations, but they did decide to let a paranormal group from Louisiana come in and do an investigation. So they kind of agreed on this. They set it up. The Spencers were going to go on a date that night and get out of the house so they could do the investigation. And when they were leaving, they were coming down the stairs, and Mark immediately started to feel sick. Like he just didn't feel good. Like
Hmm.
he was kind of dizzy, just didn't feel good. And then Rebecca says she felt weird too. Like she just kind of heard kind of like a voice just telling her don't go, like just kind of something weird. But they dismissed it and they left. Like they leave the house, they're going to dinner or whatever. So the paranormal group starts to do their investigation and immediately have some instances. They say they hear singing in the home when there was no one singing, nothing was turned on, nothing going on. They heard voices coming from the attic. Uh, all of a sudden, when they were investigating, the lights completely go out. So, of
Ooh.
course, I know. And of course, they freak out. They're freaking out. There's no storm, there's nothing like that. They look out the windows. The neighbors all have power. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So they go ahead and call the Spencers to come back. And it turns out that a large limb happened to fall like right on that side of the house with the power, like
That can't be a
complete.
coincidence. No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Completely taking out the power. And they go ahead and kind of call
Wow.
off the investigation that for that night. But they do reschedule it. So this happened like at the beginning of June in 2008, and then they rescheduled it for like later that month. So they come back and they do some investigation. They do some EVPs, and they get 40 different EVPs. And they said that these EVPs were very intelligent, like answering questions when, that kind of EVP. So,
Right.
like, they would ask a question like, "What do you think?" Or, there's one I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, very, very intelligent EVPs. And at that time, a website pops up and says bestandworst.com ranks the Allen House as the number one haunted house in America
Really?
in 2008. In America. So
No,
this.
that's pretty cool.
Yes. So the Spencers kind of keep on enjoying their home. They open it up to Halloween. On Halloween, they have their visitors come by. They're kind of embracing the whole situation. So in January of 2009, there is another follow-up investigation, and there's more paranormal and EVPs found. Okay. So people are just EVP in it. So later that year in August 2009, Mark is kind of looking around the attic. He said he was always drawn to the attic. He loved the attic. He would spend a lot of time in the attic. So he's in the attic, kind of, just looking around. In the floorboards of the attic, he finds 90 hidden letters, all addressed to Ladell.
Oh my
So this is
gosh.
the letter. So Ladell,
I forgot about this part.
yeah. So Ladell had all these letters from a man named, oh, and
From a
here
boyfriend.
here's the name, Prentice Hemingway Savage. Does that not sound like a stage name?
It does. It does.
And a
Wow.
little pretentious?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Which, I mean, she's Liddell. She has a town. She
That's
went to
almost Adele
Cuba.
too.
Adele. Yeah. I wonder if she should have wrote a hit album instead of doing the sign up. But anyway, that's a different story. So evidently, Prentice and Liddell had dated when she was very young, okay? So, and these letters would show Mark, like, and the Spencers, kind of the why, maybe, to Liddell's situation, but it showed a very strong love affair. But yeah, Prentice and Liddell dated when they were young. He was from Monticello. He lived in Monticello, grew up there. I think he was, right at her same age. But allegedly, it said that it did not work out because Caddy kept a vigil on her and did not
Right.
let him get physically close to her Liddell, did not let him have any alone time. So he kind of moved on from Liddell at that time. And so he moved on. So Prentice was born in, I don't know how to say this, Chickett, Arkansas, Chicot. It's Chicot, Arkansas.
Chico.
Chico, Arkansas. Okay. So he was born in Chico in 1892 and he lived in Arkansas in the Monticello area, and not sure about a lot of things, but by 1918, his World War One registration card with the government showed he was working in the oil business in Texas by 1918. Okay, so just to kind of give you some background on him. So there's some blank spaces here, but by 1940 census, he was living in Minnesota. I almost said Montecito. I don't know what I almost said. He was living in Minnesota and had a wife, Helene. It says Helene. Some places say Helen, and then some places said he had two different wives. I don't think he did, but he had Helen, and evidently he had a stepdaughter. He did not have children of his own, but under the census it listed Helen or Helene, a stepdaughter, and then a servant. So in his household, he was a very successful businessman. He was managing what's called the Ruin Transportation Corporation, and he was vice president of Texaco.
Vice
Uh,
President of Texaco.
yes, he was very
Wow.
important, very wealthy. He had a great job. He had a lot of money. He had a lot going on. Okay, so, according to information Mark Spencer gleaned from all the letters, and then Mark actually wrote a
They
book
had never even heard of this no one had ever even heard of this person till that
till,
moment.
yes, till two. Well,
That's
yeah, the family would have
craziness.
only known of Prentice from early teenage years of Liddell. Like
Right.
yeah, so the family would not have known anything about this. And he found these letters in 2009. And of course, all the
That's
family's like
crazy.
deceased. So,
Right.
yes. So, Mark wrote a book about this. The book is called A Haunted Love Story. It was written in 2012. And Mark has written other books, and him and Rebecca have even written a book called Monticello. I think that they've published fairly recently. So they have written several things. But Prentice and Liddell met up again, evidently, in 1948. So Prentice still had family in Arkansas. So he was visiting with some relatives, and he and his wife, so he had his wife with him. Um, they were visiting with friends. They were in a group, and Liddell was actually in the group. So they had mutual friends. Liddell was there too. And they were all at the horse races in Hot Springs.
Hmm.
So this chance meeting up again very quickly began a correspondence between him and Liddell,
Oh no.
which, yes. And of course, he's married, which
I
she
smell
was
trouble.
trouble is brewing. So, yeah, and of
Yeah.
course, he called her Dell, his little Dell, and he literally wrote to her. So I mean, this was March that he met up with her, like maybe a week or so later, he wrote her and he says, "My dear Dell, ugh, I hope that foursome of yours got back to Monticello in good shape." And he goes on later in the letter to state a highlight of his trip to Arkansas was seeing her.
Aw.
OMG. That's like getting a
Aw.
Facebook message from your old boyfriend and he's
Yeah.
married. Like,
Yeah.
ew. I'd be like, Prentice, you dog. I'd be like, no, I don't think so. I don't play that. Would you, Andy? If
No, of course not.
now Dell was single. She was single and mingling, but
Yeah.
Prentice wasn't. And Prentice is very much married. And now I will say this, he was very married and very he would literally call Helen or Helene H, like in the letters. He would just say
Mhm.
H. And was not very fond of her. He had nothing nice to say
Oh,
about
good
her at all. I
Lord.
think he had a really good relationship with her family and his stepdaughter, like her daughter, but he did not evidently like her, allegedly. Or what he said,
Allegedly.
allegedly. So she promptly, of course, Ladell received this letter and she promptly replied to him, and he wrote back that her prompt reply was real cute. Thus they began their illicit affair by letter. So literally
As you
by
said, their illicit affair by letter.
yes, by April they were clearly
That's almost
showing.
really sad, though. I mean, I hate that. That is so sad.
Well, yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's like, well, nowadays we would have this illicit affair on Facebook Messenger, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah.
people do, but I mean, they don't write letters.
You're right about that.
They
You're
don't
right
write.
about
I
that.
don't think they write letters. But literally, this was April. They started this correspondence in March. So literally by April, her letters were stating how her feelings in writing to him is wrong. So she was already falling in love, feeling like everything that they were doing was wrong. She knew it was wrong. So
Right.
there's correspondence just continued. They would, so these are letters that are written to her from him, obviously. Like he says that he would burn her letters. Like he basically got rid of the evidence of all of her
Right.
letters. And they were being very, these letters were getting, kind of to the point about their situation. So I'm sure on Prentice's side, he was just like, I'm getting rid of this. So basically, it said, I did find an article kind of about the Prentice stuff. So it says, Prentice, was already married to another woman, Helene. It says Helena here, but that was not her name. A person he said he detested. Prentice had risen in stature and had a high level job with an oil company, and he and Helene had plenty of money. Prentice also had free time and could easily afford to play around with women on the side. So, this was an article kind of written about
Good Lord.
Prentice. So, he was a little dog. Like, he kind of he had a history of playing around. Like, I don't think he had been faithful to Helene before.
Anybody?
Anybody.
Yeah.
Now it
Yeah,
says
I know those
you
types.
know those types. Have you gotten a
I do.
message? No,
No.
I have not, because I would shut that stuff down. I'd be like, don't you dare. I love my dairy. So anyway, everybody knows that though. They won't bother me. But anyway, he set his sights on Ladell and pushed her to see him, wanting a relationship with her on the side. This time, Mom wasn't there to stop him, so Caddy wasn't there. So first, Prentice pledged his eternal love for Liddell. Then he deserted her when Helene gave him a hard time in divorce court. So I could tell he was trying, evidently, his letters, he kept telling Liddell that he was going to leave Helene. He was going to divorce her. He didn't love her, blah, blah, and that they were going to be together. I think they even had a weekend. Him and Liddell had a weekend together in like Memphis. They would meet up. He traveled
Oh,
a
so
lot.
they
It
were
wasn't
in
just
it.
in
They were
letters.
in it to win it then. Whew,
They were
goodness.
in it to win it. Like Dell was in love. I mean,
I
she
was
was in
about to say,
love.
oh, it's kind of like the notebook and the letters, but no, if they were meeting
No.
up on the side,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was
Nope.
she was meeting up with him whenever he was traveling without Helene.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he does, I guess, start trying to do something to get away from Helene, but she's got his number. Helene has his number, and it's getting ugly. And Prentice loves his money and his property and basically kind of makes that obvious. So kind of he does write a final time to Ladell before Christmas of 1948. So this was all, I mean, this was a very quick affair, like starting in March, and then she is suicidal by December.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
bless her heart. Yeah.
So this is his last little letter to her. He literally says, "My dear, today I am off for the big city. Am leaving at 9 this morning and will be gone until the 11th. I don't know just how I will find time to do much writing, but will try and drop you a note while I am there. Was glad you could go to Memphis, but am sorry I could not have been there to visit." So that's where they were kind of meeting up in Memphis.
Mm.
My letters my letters are not so hot, but between getting ready to go east and other personal problems, I just can't seem to write like I should like to do. It surely seems to me that when trouble walks in, everything else seems to walk out.
It's
I
like
am
a
sorry.
Taylor Swift song from the 40s.
I know. I am sorry it is this way, but dear, it can't be helped. I never realized.
Even Parker is sitting here like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. I mean, basically, this is his Dear John letter to her.
Dear
Uh,
John. Yeah.
maybe the ray of sunshine will come through the clouds in time and life will take another viewpoint. It is not all financial problems, but there are others, and that is what makes it difficult, as you can understand, I am sure. Have been
Blah, blah, blah.
yeah, basically, I like money. I don't like you. I'm gonna stay with Helene.
Yeah.
Basically, he ends it. Must run, as I am sure somebody will be coming into the office soon, but wanted to get this note off to you while I had the chance. Take good care of yourself, dear love, X. So he signed his name X by the time it was kind of ending. So,
Mm.
yeah. So that is the last letter that will ever come from Prentice. Okay. And then they did have a mutual friend. She did confide. I mean, she was hiding these letters. She had told nobody about this situation. I mean,
I wouldn't either.
how embarrassing. But she did
Yeah.
confide in a person named Genevieve, and Genevieve evidently was kind of like a go between, like a friend of both of them or something, from what I could see. So,
So a crap stir.
but Genevieve is telling her that she's also not hearing from Prentice. So both women are like, Prentice is done, like she's getting that vibe. And I guess she's hoping beyond hope. It said that she's hoping that he's going to show up to Christmas party. So they're throwing a big Christmas party at the Allen house. Okay. Well, he doesn't show up. And so it
Mm.
said that she fixes her a little plate and then she gets some rum and goes up to her bedroom that night at the party. And that's when she takes the cyanide.
Good grief.
All over a man.
Wow. Wow.
Now, I
That
will
is so
say
sad.
this. I did look up information on Prentice. So he
Mm-hmm.
lived to be 85. So this happened in 49. He didn't die until 1978. And he was still married to Helene or Helen.
Huh.
Like it was spelled Helen at that point. They had dropped the E. Who knows? But he was still married. He never divorced her. And yeah, he lived to be 85. And Ladell killed herself. So Ladell, this is weird. She was 54 when she did this. That was the same age as her dad.
That is weird.
Is that not weird?
It's
I
really
thought I thought
weird.
that was really weird. Um, so kind of now, so that's like the history. Of course, there's like a whole deal. Okay, so this was 2009 that they find these letters. Mark and Rebecca, Mark's writing the books about Ladell. He's very fascinated with the whole Ladell
Yeah, I
story.
would be too. I mean, that's
Yes.
absolutely
And
insane.
this book is so good. When we went for our dinner with a ghost, I purchased the book, A Haunted Love Story, and I have it. So it's such a
I
good book.
have one of his books. I don't remember which one I have though. It's been several years,
Yeah,
but
I
I
think
have one.
he's written a few, and like I said, he has written, him and Rebecca. Evidently, she does photography, and they have written a book on Monticello. So, kind of this is kind of going into a little little during the time of paranormal. So now we're getting into kind of more of the paranormal stuff, but kind of ever since the house was sold in 55, and it wasn't sold in 55. This history is not accurate, these people. But anyway, so people have been experiencing, I told you about the closet situation, they say that people have, seen things. Some people attribute some of the ghosts like a little boy, and some people
Mhm.
think that it's Alan, which I don't tend to think it is. I mean, Alan mainly lived in the house when he was a teenager. So I
Yeah.
don't know, but they do attribute a little boy being Alan. And I would think Carl grew up there. Carl Jr., he actually grew up in the house. So
Yeah.
I think if there was a manifestation of a little boy, it'd maybe be Carl. I don't know. But they do attribute it. I guess they attribute everything when they see a woman on the second floor.
It's Ladell.
It's Ladell. It is definitely Ladell. But they do think that the little boy is Alan. So it kind of goes into that. So the entity again, people have talked about how they see an older man. So people do in the entity, they do see Liddell, they do see Joe. So people say they do see Joe, they do see Caddy, always, they see a young boy of about 5 and they attribute that to be Alan. So there are a lot of ghostly tales and things. So people are hearing spirit again. The They did find a boy's gravestone hanging inside. It said that they found a boy's gravestone hanging on the inside of one of the old dilapidated carriage house.
What do you mean
And
hanging?
yeah, evidently it was just hanging like actual gravestone was in there, like hanging on a wall, and I don't understand that. But it said that maybe
That's weird.
yeah, it said that maybe one of the servants who had come to work for them had just brought it with them, had brought the
Oh,
headstone, and so they don't believe that child. But the land does have the history. The children. It had the children's home, it had the Confederate hospital.
right.
Kind of to this day, it still has a lot of activity, the Spencer. So, kind of in recent years, so the house was put on the market in the recent years, and I could not find that it sold. The tax records do not show that the house was sold, but the internet does say that the house has changed hands and that they think that maybe there's new owners. But the website, if you go to the Allen House on Facebook, it does say, like, they posted in March of this year that they would no longer open it up for touring, but that they
Oh,
would,
well, that's sad.
I know, but that they would have in October, that they would have this like corn maze thing. I don't know what that is, but that would be going on. So to this
Well,
current
I'm
day,
glad we got to see it when we could.
I know, I'm so happy about that. I will say there are multiple fun things that people, of course we're going to reference everything that we've talked about, but also, and of course the book, and I've talked about that. But there is in 2011, the story of Liddell's suicide and haunting of the Allen House was aired on the Biography channel, and it's called My Ghost Story, so people can find that. You do have the book written in 2012 by Mark Spencer. And then I watched A Haunting, which was on the Discovery Network. You can also watch, I could not find this episode anywhere. I tried to buy it, couldn't find it. But Ghost Hunters did investigate the Allen House. I think all they found were some EVPs, but that was in
Yeah.
2013. And then there was a
Yeah, I remember
sci-fi
them talking
channel.
about that too.
Yeah, and it seems like EVPs, and like I said, there's an EVP on YouTube like that was taken, and it literally says like it asked them a question in the house, and it says like, did she do this or that? I couldn't understand the question, but it said yes she does. Like the EVP came back as yes
Oh,
she
that's
does. Like it, so
creepy.
that's why it said that these EVPs are like intuitive, they're intelligent EVPs, not
Right.
just like, so what's there. Do I think it's haunted? Yes. I do. There's just been so much activity. I did not experience, I was there. They let you walk around the house. They let you, hang out and do EVP sessions and all that.
Yeah. I
I
was
never
very
had
shocked at
anything.
the freedom we had, like, walking around up there. Sherry and
Yes.
I went with Sherry, one of our friends from high school,
Hmm.
and, we spent a lot of time in the attic.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
I
And
went
it
with
was
Corbett and
legit
Ashley.
creepy. Yeah.
Me and Derry met Corbin and Ashley, and we surprised Ashley. Actually, it was fun. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything happen. It was definitely creepy, definitely beautiful. I think I don't think all these people are lying, so I really do think people things have happened. But I did like this little tidbit. So the Spencers, yes, it's they know that they were living in a haunted house, that they've had paranormal activity and they've opened up the house and stuff. But Mark Spencer, I'm going to leave it on this. Mark Spencer said, "We do not really have a fear of the spirits or the ghosts in the house. If you want to be scared of something, it should be the living." And
Ah, I
that
agree with him.
and that is profound and true. So
Yes.
I
I agree with him.
me too. So yeah. So that was a lot. But that the Allen house had a lot, and the Allens had a lot, and they had a very big life. They had a lot of tragedy, and yeah, but that's it. And that was very spectacular for me. I enjoyed the research. That one was fun. So I was thrilled to do it.
Wow.
So
I
yay.
mean,
So that's it.
that's a pretty good concise history if anyone's ever wondered what the backstory is for the house. That's a pretty good history, man.
Yeah. You should, are you thinking that it was too much?
No,
Am
no,
I
no, no.
thinking it
I'm
was too,
just
it was a lot. It was a lot.
no, I'm still thinking about poor Ladell, bless her
Oh.
heart. I
And
feel
that
bad for her.
Prentice, I mean, and
Yeah, I
you know
know.
what? That just sucks. But I hate to say it, ladies. Are they going to leave their wives? Or
No.
no, they're not. They're not. So if you're
Yeah.
in that situation,
And if
ladies,
they
get
do you want
out.
them?
Yeah. Do you want that? Do you really want that?
Yeah.
Do you really want to hurt me? Oh, wait. Sorry, little 80s there. Okay. So follow us on all the places. Check us out and email us all the corrections to, to
All
this,
the corrections.
all the corrections on what I mispronounced or anything. If you know more to this story, please let us know. Love it. It's just
Yeah,
very interesting.
this is a very
So
cool
yeah,
story. I
reach
mean,
out.
and the place, hopefully the next owners will,
Hmm.
keep it, a
Open or maybe think
open,
about it.
whatever,
Just
something. So,
once a year. Yeah, and if
yeah,
it really again couldn't tell, I mean it sounds like maybe it could be just caught up in escrow or maybe in transition.
yeah,
But yeah, whoever gets it, it'd be cool if you open it back up to people for tours. $5 tours.
yeah. I'd love to own a house
Okay.
like that. Oh my goodness.
So
So gorgeous.
if it's ever for sale again, we should buy it.
Yeah, that
And
would
then
be fun.
we can Airbnb it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe one day. So that's it. But that's
Alrighty.
it for this week. We love you guys and
All right, bye. Happy Halloween.
bye. Kisses.